We are live. We are live. We are live. Welcome to college football's peak around the corner with your host, Greg Pflugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do us well, please subscribe to our channel. Smash the like button if you like our content. Share the video with your family and friends if you want to support this independent national college football rebel outpost with a donation. Help us keep the lights on and grow the channel. Just hit that $sign where you make your comment, and I will get to your super chat as quick as I possibly can. Welcome everybody into the studio that sits on the corner, the very corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to become a legend with your comments and with your phone calls. It's going to be a pretty straightforward Sunday evening, early evening, late afternoon college football episode or live show of PATC. Now going forward, not next Sunday, but the Sundays after that, we're going to be doing our aftermath show, talking about everything that happened on that previous Thursday, Friday, Saturday games. So our Sunday shows can get quite lively. The elbows get thrown in the chat. There's a lot of crying going on in the phone calls. There is some celebration going on. I remember last year, I think I complained almost every single week about my beloved Golden Gophers. It was a very difficult year. The wins and losses were okay, but Well, we don't have to get into that today. But we are going to be talking about University of Minnesota. A place that I know very, very, very well. Now, let's first kind of get the ground rules ready here. As the title, the picture title here, Big Ten school which supported Penn State, Nebraska, Rutgers, Maryland, USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon editions, want what schools next? Let's not get it twisted. Minnesota has a voice, but they're not calling the shots. They haven't called the shots since the early 1950s, except when it comes to the addition of Notre Dame in the men's hockey conference. Minnesota called the shot on that one. It is why we broke the story. It is the reason why we had the story. We did not have the USC story before everybody else because of the University of Minnesota. No. You can read all about that. There's a way for you to find out about how. Go to episode, I forget what number it is. I can't remember what episode. Episode 22, I think. Or go to the Los Angeles article that's below on my X account, whatever. But it had nothing to do with the University of Minnesota information coming out of that school. Same thing with the Oregon, Washington. When we gave you real-time information on those editions. That information did not come out from the University of Minnesota. Came out from other places. However, and I'm going to try to explain this. The University of Minnesota they're not going to be up. They're not going to be able to gather a coalition together. They're not the ones. It's Ohio State. It is Ohio State and Penn State that are going to be calling the shots on this. And we've gone over the reasons why that is. But Minnesota does seem to be the canary in the coal mine. It seems that they get on the right side of history. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Now, I know a lot of you are going to say, great. Leadership at a university changes quite often. So you can't really go by history. You know, what University of Minnesota wanted 30 years ago is completely different than what they wanted now. And maybe the University of Minnesota is out of step now. Maybe. But there are structural things that remain regardless of the leadership at these universities. And there's a lot of examples to that. And I'll give you one. And I'm going to set the table on this story. And then we're going to get back to it in the back half of the monologue. Our monologue is basically 90% this. Because I got into a long discussion, an intentional long discussion with BTM, because I really don't talk, unless it's Golden Gopher propaganda, I really do not talk about the University of Minnesota on this show. I've talked about Penn State, Ohio State, Florida State, Georgia, but I rarely ever talk about the University of Minnesota when it comes to the next realignment. They have been historically in a Michigan, Wisconsin, Northwestern coalition. Michigan, Wisconsin, Northwestern. Now, there have been a couple of big exceptions to that, especially with Michigan. But mainly Minnesota hangs tight with Wisconsin and Northwestern. And Minnesota acquiesces to Wisconsin and Northwestern. All of them are major research universities. Massive research universities. But Minnesota is the third of those three. But the University of Minnesota is a very important university. It is the engine that fuels the engine of the Midwest besides the city of Chicago. Without Chicago, it is Minnesota, all those Fortune 500 companies, and the University of Minnesota that fuels the economy. So, in that way, Minnesota seems to be a canary in the coal mine when it comes to what the Big Ten is thinking on doing. So I want to take this time to talk about what we believe to know, and I'm going to start this off because I know there's University of Minnesota people going to watch this show eventually. I'm going to say the following. Allegedly. Everything I say in this live show is allegedly. So take that how you want to take it. The University of Minnesota, and I'm not going to, again, we're going to go to something else here, but I want to set the table. Heartbreak 25, $2 holla. Correction, Minnesota president supported Penn State, not the athletic director. Penn State is the most complicated story of all of those additions. When it came to the voting, when it came to the supporting, especially when it came to Minnesota. And Heartbreak 25, I will get to that later on. I appreciate it. Minnesota did flip its vote in support of Penn State, and we'll get into that. But I thank you, Heartbreak 25. You're absolutely correct. Thank you for the $2 holler. Thank you very much. But let me finish setting the table here. And then anytime a super chat, you control the floor. Phone calls, you control the floor. Other comments, I will pick and choose depending on how relative it is to the subject we're talking about. There's a couple other structural things going on. Number one, the main question is why? Why is the Big Ten looking at school 19 and school 20? Why? They got all this money rolling in. Everything's going great. Because the Big Ten was told back in Jim Delaney's time that it'd be best for the conference to be a 2-region conference, not a 1-region conference. As a conference of 11 members, Penn State being the exception, everything goes in the Midwest, and Jim Delaney was told, you better become a 2-region conference. The Big Ten did that. I'm sorry, Penn State and Nebraska. Then they did that, Rutgers and Maryland. When the Big Ten expanded with Penn State, Nebraska, the conference benefited from that greatly. When the conference expanded with Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA, the conference and its institutions benefited from it greatly. If they expanded to 18 and they did not feel the benefits of it, they would not be thinking about 19 and 20. 18 is an ugly number, but it's workable. They're almost a national conference, but they have felt the benefit of it even way past projections. So when you do something and you benefit from it, you want to do more of it. And the outside forces are telling the consultants, are telling the Big Ten, you're still leaving money on the table by not becoming a true national conference and getting to the southeastern part of the country. Also, it has benefited the Big Ten, not just like economically, but the diversity of students and the diversity of the student athlete. If you could just talk about it as an athletic conference. Bringing in a USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington, it has benefited the conference athletically. It has made the conference more diverse in how they play football. And what the West Coast schools did great, the rest of the Big Ten is picking up on it a little bit. And what the Midwestern schools did great, the West Coast schools are picking up on it at least a little bit. And boy, do they want to go to the southeastern part of the country. Just diversity of the students and the student athletes. So there is a motivation for the Big Ten to go to 20. To at least 20. They've got multiple media partners. It's fantastic to have all these media partners. In some way it hurts your TV ratings, but in other ways it helps fill the coffers. And those media partners are thirsty for content and hopefully top tier content. The University of Minnesota in particular, and then I will get out, we're going to talk a little bit of football here, and then we're going to swing back into this. But the University of Minnesota has a couple of things that is not going away, no matter what type of leadership you have. Number one, football, when it comes to an athletic conference, football drives the bus, it owns the bus, it puts fuel into the bus. And the University of Minnesota, and I think they're going to have a pretty good football team this year, very good under PJ Fleck. They're not the driver of the bus. They're never going to be the driver of the bus. Because it's structurally almost impossible. They're going to be the driver of hockey, but they're not going to be the driver of football. It doesn't mean they can't have a good football team. I think they have a good football team this year. They've had an above average Big Ten football team since PJ Fleck has arrived. But they're never going to be the driver. So the University of Minnesota isn't all that worried about bringing in another big brand football unit school that will beat them on the football field. As long as it benefits the University of Minnesota. So that's one of the hurdles that the University of Minnesota, the athletic department, their boosters, administrators, never really had a hang up over. They're okay. They don't mind the competition because in most cases against these big brand football programs that have a lot more resources, will always have a lot more resources, and will always have a better recruiting ground than Minnesota, it doesn't really matter. Bring on another big brand. The other part of the University of Minnesota and why they have been so pro-expansionist, and they have, the University of Minnesota has been uniquely pro-Big Ten expansionist. They're in the middle of the country. You want to add a few West schools? Good. University of Minnesota has been going out west to play football forever. Look at the recent history. PJ Fleck demands that the University of Minnesota goes out west. Colorado, Fresno State, California. They're always going out west. They need to go out west. Before they took USC, UCLA, Washington, Oregon, they had to go out west. And of course, going east. So Minnesota is in the center of the. So they're not a Penn State. They're not even a Ohio State, Indiana. They're not an Oregon, Washington. They're in the center. That's another structural reason why the University of Minnesota has been uniquely pro-expansionist. Another reason. The University of Minnesota was the founder of this conference. They have been heavily involved in these expansions. And I know a lot of people disagree, but a lot of people disagree with this, but this expansion has worked. Now, someday it might not work. Someday this large conference might fracture. Of course, nothing stays the same forever. Forever is a very long time, but at this point, it has worked. The University of Minnesota is in a unique position to be in the Big Ten Conference, to be a founder of the Big Ten Conference, and they also are so heavily involved in an incredible bandwidth of different research. So they're involved with so many different universities. You cannot throw a rock. You talk about every ACC school that is a Big Ten candidate list, is on the Big Ten candidate list. All of them have a relationship. All of them have a relationship with the University of Minnesota. All of them. And I mean, all of them. Important stuff going on. Real important stuff going on. And we're going to get into that. But, and again, I know this is a major point of controversy, discussion. I know a lot of people say in the comments section, and that's fine. That's what it's there for. But a lot of people say stuff like, well, Greg, you don't have to be in the Big Ten to do research with the Purdue, with the Northwestern, with the Washington, and you're absolutely correct. But where people get it wrong, and this is so important to understand, where people get it wrong, with all due respect, you benefit a lot from being in the Big Ten when it comes to research, when it comes to being the academic alliance, when it comes to being in the BTAA, Big Ten Academic Alliance. In fact, to the point, I can say this over and over and over again, and it really isn't going to make much of an impact. So I decided to go to the most recent University of Minnesota statement on being a member of the BTAA and why that is so important. And that was just late 2025, less than a year ago. It's a short little statement, but it should be able to. The universities have benefited from being part of the BTAA. Oregon and Washington wanted to become members. USC, UCLA wanted to become members. And all these universities that have been having all these elevated talks with the Big Ten, they all want to be members of the BTAA. You can talk about TV ratings. You can talk about playing in the cold weather. You can talk about playing baseball, softball, and all those. But these universities want to be a part of the BTAA. Florida State does. Miami does. Clemson does. Georgia Tech and Duke are a complicated matter. We'll get into that. But these schools want to be part of the BTAA. That is incredibly important. So we'll get into all of it. Minnesota's not calling the shots. They haven't called the shots since, 1954, and we'll get into that. But the University of Minnesota is the canary in the coal mine. Historically and structurally, they seem to be, whatever they think in seems to be the pulse of the Big Ten. And I talked to BTM, and he, of course, how do I say this? We feel that we we know where the University of Minnesota, where their votes would be cast on the expansion of the Big Ten. We will get into all that and more. I want to thank everybody for joining us on a Sunday, August 16th. Again, our Sundays are going to be filled with the aftermath shows talking about what just happened in college football. So please join us on Sundays going forward. A lot of aftermath, a lot of crying, a lot of celebrating. Let's go through the Super Chat. Kenneth Maynard, $5 holla. Kenneth Maynard. More Gator propaganda. Who does Florida want? Hint. Their public Ivy peers in the South's oldest rivalry. Yes. That is correct. There is no question about that. There is absolutely no question about it. In fact, the University of Florida already does some really big stuff with with Virginia. So, yeah, no question about it. We do believe here at Peek Around the Corner, though, that Florida Gainesville would not be a veto, would not be a hurdle for Florida State. Now, I know what Pete Thamel said. And Pete Thamel's got a lot of credibility with me. And we've heard all that stuff before. We reported on June 15th, 2024, that Florida State and Clemson were not the number one targets of the SEC. I got dragged over the coals, but a door was open to us. We were told what was going on. And then in early, mid-July, Brett McMurphy had that big article. And it said exactly what we reported on June 15th. And you know why that is? Because the SEC has leaked it to everybody. However, and I'm not going to sit here and say that Pete Thamel is absolutely wrong. I'm just saying some of that stuff has been known for quite a while. And to me, it sounded like old talking points. That it might have been a little bit old and stale. However, what I would agree with Pete Thamel on is that North Carolina and Virginia remain the top targets for the SEC. That I would agree on. I also would include the following. There is a reason why the Florida State Seminoles have not put all their eggs in one basket, and Clemson hasn't either. Clemson, just for an example, and we'll talk about it later, Clemson's doing really important stuff with 4 other universities right now. One of them being the University of Minnesota. So Clemson has not put all their eggs in one basket. Florida State has not put all their eggs in one basket. And the one thing that I am most assured of, which gets me in most trouble, but it happens to be true, and it's okay if you disagree with me, but I have put my flag in the ground on this one. Clemson and Florida State did not have a landing spot when they sued the ACC, which makes what they did more brave, not less. They wanted to determine more of their sovereignty, not less. Hold on one second. Okay. I do want to thank everybody for joining us. We got 171 people in the chat. 171. I appreciate it so very much. Let me do a quick roll call. We're going to really get into this. Village Idiot is in the house. Check it out. Edward the Auburn Tiger. Dante's Inferno Purgatory. Kenneth the Meaner. Tough Tony is in the house. Christopher Hooter is here. Bracket Cat. Anthony TV. I'm sure I missed a lot of people. I apologize. Mohr Simmons is in the house. Mudville is here. Doc Boots. Tumasta. Stephen Timothy Vitt is in the house. John McFamlor Bill Kukuza, thanks for coming on, Bill. Appreciate it. The Almighty, Buckeye Greg, PNW Ute, BYU Football, Mama Duck, Clemson Tiger is in the house. OBD Dunn is here. So, Greg, did Florida State break all their eggs in everyone's basket? To make an omelet, you got to break some eggs. And Florida State and Clemson broke some eggs. But they won the court case, so they made an omelet. And now they've been working on relationships. And Florida State look what Florida State has done in the research. Look what they've done buying a hospital. Clemson has an AAU project for 2035, a vision. Both of them are putting in a lot of work. So yeah, they did break eggs. But nothing lasts forever. Nothing is static. Thank you, OBD Don, for coming on in. Appreciate it. What else we got going? We got Buckeye Gray becoming an early peak Cloak and Dagger member. I appreciate it, sir. You are hereby knighted Cloak and Dagger. Thank you, Buckeye Greg. I appreciate it so very much. Thank you, Buckeye Greg. Okay. If I missed you, I apologize. Buckshot Kid is here. Doug Steinhauser's here. I know I missed a lot of you. Okay, I apologize. I want to get to, I just want to go through the week 0 football games again. We got to talk college football. We talk college football in every live show. We have talked a lot of college football. We've done everything here at Peak Around the Corner. We have done the I Do Declare competition. We cannot bring in any more predictions. We've got 128 bold predictions. Somebody's going to be the I Do Declare World College Football Champion at the end of the national championship game. And we've done all of our predictions, every single one of them, in every conference. The ACC, the SEC. We've done our order of finish prediction. Texas Tech, Big 12, Buckeyes, Big 10. We did our final CFP seedings and the brackets and the results. We've done everything. So we are ready for the season. PATC Einsteins. We are ready for the season. We did 80 different spotlights on 80 different days during the off season. The dates that you see here on those live shows, we broke down the team. We have spent hundreds of hours talking college football. And now we are going in to week 0. Finally. We are within 14 days. We're 13 days away. 13 days away. We got North Carolina, TCU. We're going to be doing a watch party on this game. San Jose State, USC. The Trojans. They're going to score a lot of points in that game. North Carolina State, Virginia. C.J. Bailey. Bo Pibula. With Eli Holstein backing them up. This is a historic game. Jacksonville State, and there is a lot of steam out there. About Jacksonville State. They're going to run that ball. Well, they're playing against a machine. North Dakota State Bisons first FBS game of their historic FCS program. North Dakota State Bison fans are incredibly excited for this, and they should be. Hawaii, Stanford, the rematch of last year. New Mexico State, Fresno, Florida State. Florida State, Mike Norvell. Look, it would behoove Norvell for the Seminoles to get off on the right foot. Now, they did last year. They beat Alabama. Mike Norvell is fighting for his coaching career in Tallahassee. And we're going to get a good glimpse if the Seminoles are ready to go to battle for him. 29.5 point spread. 29.5 point spread. That's a tough one. That's a lot of points. Memphis and UNLV, the last game on the week 0 schedule. And it's the most important game of that day when it comes to the playoffs. Memphis, 5.5 points. They're getting 5.5. The over-under is 58.5. There's been a little bit of steam out there, ladies and gentlemen. There's been a little bit of steam that Jackson Arnold has not looked good in camp. I'm not saying he's not going to be QB1, but it sounds like that Dan Mullen could have the quick hook on Jackson Arnold, which is an incredibly interesting storyline going into this very important game because UNLV has their sights set on the Mountain West Conference Championship and being in the playoffs. Now, I've got New Mexico Lobos winning the conference and going into the playoffs. But UNLV, this is their goal. Their goal is to get to the playoffs. They need to beat the Memphis Tigers. So we are going to be doing our picks on this game 8 days from now. 8 days. 8 days. 8 days. It's happening once again. Craig the Gold. I love the music, but it hasn't helped you. Wow. Wow, they're coming after me already. They're coming after me. John Uzi, Greg the Gold, a.k.a. Mr. Freeze. The price of gold just went down 50%. Gold just melted worldwide. You've only got so many days left of this, right? Your days of giving me the constant elbow, calling me Greg the Cooler, those days are almost over. It's been 4 years of it. 4 years. In 8 days from now, you are going to see my picks against the spread in week 0. And you're going to be coming out of that live show going, my goodness, this is a different fat guy from Minnesota. This is a different fat guy from Minnesota. This guy's not a loser anymore. He's not the re-elected mayor of Loserville City anymore. He's a winner. So buckle up, brace for impact. All right, now let's get to it. I just wanted to go through those games again real quick. I don't want any of you guys to sit there, guys and gals, and sit there and accuse me of ambushing you on those 7 games. I want all of you to be quite aware that what is going on. Those are the 7. We're doing all 7 games probably on that Monday. A week from this Monday. All right? All right. Now, let's get to it. Big Ten school, which supported the Penn State flip vote, Nebraska, Rutgers, Maryland, USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon additions, want what schools next? First of all, let's just go real quick through the history of the University of Minnesota on their expansion. They wanted Ohio State in 1919. The Buckeyes came in on a unanimous vote. Of course, the University of Minnesota was basically running the conference at that time. In the early 1950s, I think it was 1952 or 53 or 54, I can't remember. We've talked about this before. The University of Minnesota supported, endorsed, sponsored Michigan State. Michigan sponsored Pittsburgh. Michigan State was not an AAU university. They were not an AAU university. Pittsburgh was. But Minnesota won the vote by 1 vote, and Michigan State became a Big Ten institution. 8 years later, Michigan State became AAU. So if somebody says that the Big Ten has never invited a non-AAU school or added a non-AAU school, they are wrong. But that's a battle. Good luck to you, because that comes up all the time on X, on message boards. The Big Ten has never invited a non-AAU school. That is completely wrong. The University of Minnesota sponsored a non-AAU and just got them into the conference. If Michigan would have won that battle, the internal political battle, the University of Pittsburgh would have been a Big Ten institution all these years, the last 70 years. But it was Michigan State that got the vote, and Minnesota is the one that pushed them across the finish line. Penn State was the one that was most contentious, complicated, and it almost did not happen. There was a coalition of half the conference. Half of the conference did not want Penn State. When they heard that Jim Delaney was trying to add Penn State, they did not want it to happen. So right off the bat, it did not look good for Penn State. And all this was being done in secret. All of it. They did not want the ACC to pick up on what was happening. They did not want the ACC to know that Penn State was interested in joining a conference. So it was all done in secret. All of it. There was 5 schools that were completely against Penn State. when it was first discussed. Michigan, Indiana, Minnesota, Michigan State, and Purdue. I say this now, there's a lot of different variations of this story. A lot of people have written about this story, and the stories are almost all similar, but a little bit different. What is all similar is the fact that Penn State is a Big Ten school because of Illinois and Wisconsin. Illinois was Penn State's sponsor. Illinois was the one that was aggressively pushing for the Penn State edition. It would not have happened, though, without Wisconsin, without Donna Shalala. That everybody, all that is the consensus. You're not going to get anybody disputing that. Now, John Uzi in the comment section is saying Northwestern was the deciding vote for Penn State. And that is where the stories kind of are different depending on who you ask. Northwestern was also a no vote, but their president switched on over to the yes camp. So Northwestern was an original no vote. But it was Purdue in Minnesota coming on and saying yes at the end. Michigan, it was a 7-3 vote at the end. You needed 7 votes. So the schools that stayed no was Michigan, and Bo Schembechler was not happy. And that story, no matter who's telling the story, that is 100% like nobody disputes that at all. I mean, Bo Schembechler talked about it. Indiana was against the addition of Penn State. Now you might ask, why was Indiana against the addition of Penn State? Why? 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 Because Indiana did not want the extra travel for the student athletes. Now, again, this is back in the early 1990s, but again, it's kind of humorous that Indiana was against the addition of Penn State and Michigan State. It was Donna Shalala that got the 7 votes. It was her political skills that got the 7 votes. It was in Minnesota, once again, in close alignment with Madison, Wisconsin, that got Minnesota on board, that got Northwestern on board. Remember, we talk about this Wisconsin, Minnesota, Northwestern coalition of votes, not just when it comes to expansion, but when it comes to research, when it comes to a whole bunch of stuff. They're interlocked. This is a huge example of that, not the only example of that, but this is a big example of that. That voting faction has always been important. So the Penn State one is the most complicated one. And the University of Minnesota acquiesced to Wisconsin and said, okay, we'll bring them in. Okay. Nebraska yes, they were an AAU school. And again, I'm focusing on the University of Minnesota. And again, as I started the program, I'm not sitting there, they're not calling the shots. I'm trying to give context to where Minnesota fits on this, because we've heard a door was open to us, BTM, on where University of Minnesota sits when it comes to future expansion. So this is a great day to talk about it, because we're heading into college football, and our Sundays are going to be filled with aftermath of the Saturday football games. So I think this is a good spot to talk about it. And I think I'm the right guy to talk about it, to be honest with you. But anyways, Nebraska, they were AAU, but everybody knew that Nebraska structurally, once again, just like how Minnesota is never going to become a big football brand, again in this country, the way things, Nebraska structurally is never going to be one of the top research schools in the Big Ten. They've made improvement. They're combining all their state schools, Kearney and Omaha, so they have a good shot of being AAU again. But Nebraska was never going to be Northwestern. Nebraska was never going to be Michigan. They were never going to be Minnesota. But the University of Minnesota came full throttle support to bring Nebraska in as a Big Ten member. Minnesota was 100% for Nebraska, without a shadow of a doubt. And Nebraska got in when they finally got those communications going between Lincoln and Chicago. It got done. Rutgers and Maryland, Minnesota was 100% in support of adding Rutgers and Maryland. When the Big Ten could not get a North Carolina, when they could not get a Virginia, when they could not get a Georgia Tech, Minnesota was 100% support of Rutgers and Maryland. Minnesota was in 100% in support of a USC and UCLA. Minnesota was ecstatic, wanted to go west. They got it. They wanted USC, UCLA. Minnesota got what they wanted. Minnesota was in complete support of Washington and Oregon. That was not a problem for the University of Minnesota. They were in, all in. They wanted Washington. They do a lot of things with Washington. They want to do a lot of things in the future with the University of Washington. And of course, Oregon, a great brand multiplier. But again, Minnesota was all in support when others were not. Iowa was not in support. Penn State was not in support. Ohio State was not in support. Michigan had a little bit of hesitation, then they supported it. Wisconsin supported it. Northwestern supported it. Minnesota supported it. Then Nebraska comes jumping on along. And when Nebraska always supported it. And they just had enough oomph to get it done. So I just wanted to set the history. While the University of Minnesota is not calling the shots, no way, no how, they do kind of get linked up with the coalition that pushes it over the line at times. And again, I've talked about how the University of Minnesota has been uniquely pro-expansionist. And structurally why that is. Being in the center of the country helps, and there are other reasons. I've gone through this before, and we're going to go through it just quickly again. This is Mark Coyle, about last year, 2025, from the Pioneer Press. Mark Coyle, the athletic director of Minnesota, who rarely speaks in public about these things, had an interview with Andy Greeter talking about the future of Big Ten expansion. Talked about more expansion. And it says here that Coyle also expects the Big Ten to expand at some point. The conference grew from 14 members to 18 in 2024 with the addition of Southern Cal, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. The plan has not been that the Big Ten would stay at 18. In fact, the Oregon and Washington additions were supposed to be a part of a bigger blend move at the end of this decade. But the Oregon and Washington, the opportunity arose and it happened. But the plan was never to stay at 18. It just wasn't. And Coyle has been there for a long time, and he knows this. And that's why Coyle expects, he did not say in this interview, well, maybe we will, maybe we won't, we may not, who knows. Coyle comes out and says, I expect the Big Ten to expand at some point. Our friends, this is Mark Coyle, our friends at Oregon and Washington wanted so badly to be in the Big Ten that they're getting half the media revenue. They're only getting half. I mean, think about that. Okay? But they still want it in. And this is Mark Coyle. Whether it's 2 days or 2 years, I do think there's going to be continued fluctuation because of this House settlement era. I can tell you peers in the Big Ten are trying to find revenue, right? What are the peers in the other conferences trying to do right now? We have the best media deals in the country, so there's going to be more movement. So Mark Coyle, who never wins a press conference, never wins a press conference. He's not going to be a part of one of these new age athletic directors that are business savvy. And Mark Coyle is going to be the last of his kind at the University of Minnesota. He's not outspoken, but in this interview, he did say, I expect the Big Ten to expand at some point, whether it's 2 days from now or 2 years from now. He did not say whether it's 2 days from now or 5 years from now. He said 2 days or 2 years from now. There is going to be more fluctuation. Now let me go back and explain why the Big Ten is a little bit different than the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12. And why people take a lot of time in trying to explain why being a member of the BTAA is so important and so valuable. I did not want to go way back in the time because that would be worthless. So I took a University of Minnesota because we're talking about the University of Minnesota. I'm just focusing on the University of Minnesota on this live show. And I've never done that before when it comes to expansion because they're not the ones calling the shot. But I think this is a good way to put context into everything. Give you a better vision of what is happening out there. This is from October 28, 2025. Less than a year ago. Okay? I did not want to take a 2017 article, a 2021 article. Not an article, really, a statement from the university itself. This is from the University of Minnesota. How the benefits of the Big Ten extend far beyond athletics. I understand there's a lot of people rolling their eyes right now and they're shutting this off. And I get it, and it's my loss, not your loss. But I would not be doing my job at college football's Peak Around the Corner if I failed to mention this when it comes to the importance of all the things, all the variables that are in play. This is a major one. Even though it sounds odd, even though it's weird, even though maybe you think it's stupid, I'm just telling you, it's incredibly important to these large research universities in which they make billions off this. As a member of the Big Ten Conference, the Twin Cities campus of the University of Minnesota is part of a leading academic alliance in higher education. While the Big Ten is often celebrated for its athletic prowess, its educational benefits are equally significant, offering a wealth of opportunities for students, faculty, and staff. The Big Ten Academic Alliance, the BTAA, is a consortium that facilitates the sharing of resources, infrastructure, and expertise among its 18 member institutions, which helps them better execute their missions and goals. Through the BTAA, the university community enjoys access to a wide range of initiatives that enrich research, teaching, and professional development. Being members of this prestigious group enables our whole university, the University of Minnesota, to forge new partnerships with the nation's leading research universities. Gretchen Ritter, Executive Vice President and Provost. Again, this was less than a year ago. Enhancing educational opportunities. A notable advantage of membership in the BTAA is expanded research opportunities. Member institutions conduct 17 billion, that's with the B, in funded research annually and offer more than 1,800 different programs of study that continuously receive top ranking across the nation. 17 billion. Undergraduate students can participate in the Summer Research Opportunities Program, preparing them for graduate study through intensive research experiences with faculty mentors and enrichment activities. Last summer, the university hosted 250 students through its offered programming. Doctoral studies students can apply for the Smithsonian Fellowship, a one-year fellowship supporting research and residence at a Smithsonian Institute facilities, or traveling scholars program to spend up to 2 semesters at another Big Ten institution, taking classes not offered at the universities with no change in registration procedures or additional tuition. Again, the 18 member institutions coming together, sharing resources and access and library and opportunities. These experiences, paired with collaborative teaching initiatives and curricular resources, enrich our classrooms by broadening scholarship beyond what a single university can offer, says Ritter. Professional development. The BTAA nurtures collaboration across academic disciplines through faculty peer groups, offering shared knowledge and support, cross-institutional grants, and other means by group. Regularly offered workshops, conferences, and leadership programs tailored for faculty and staff at all career stages help employees stay at the forefront of best practices, leadership skills, emerging trends in higher education. Material access. Every BTAA institution is committed to the B1G collection a unified library that expands and ensures the longevity of both print and digital collections. Since 2019, university libraries have collaborated to craft this massive collection, which will represent roughly a quarter of all print titles in North America and will be the third largest library collection in the world. Big Ten universities, third largest library collection in the world. The process enables institutions to focus on expanding their collections in their areas of expertise and sharing resources across the alliance. BTAA members also benefit from the interlibrary loan system with unparalleled access to materials that support teaching and research, including rare and specialized materials, enhancing the depth and the breadth of academic inquiry. And finally, in the article, Big Ten membership only strengthens the University of Minnesota commitment to research and discovery for the betterment of our state, nation, and world. Being part of the Big Ten is not just about athletic rivalry. It's about academic synergy, the shared mission, resources, and collaborative spirit of the Big Ten enrich every facet of college life, supporting the success and growth of faculty, staff, and students alike. Okay. I promise you I will never read that again. Okay? This is a college football YouTube channel. National College Football YouTube channel. But if we're going to talk about Big Ten expansion, all that has to be said at some point. Because the presidents of these 18 institutions are not only going to be looking at how good you are at athletics, what type of market you bring in, what type of eyeballs you bring in. They're going to be looking at what you can bring to the BTAA. Okay? So I wanted to get that out there. So, the University of Minnesota have been uniquely pro-expansion. They've been a voice in Big Ten expansion. Well, they're the founder of the Big Ten, so they've been a part of this. The University of Minnesota was a big supporter of the creation of the Big Ten Network. The Big Ten at the University of Minnesota was not a big supporter of the creation of the Big Ten's men's hockey conference. They did not want that created. Ohio State did. Michigan did. Michigan State did. Wisconsin did. Minnesota held out. But eventually the University of Minnesota acquiesced because when you got Ohio State saying you need to get this done, the University of Minnesota finally listened and said, well, you know, these big football programs, these big brands, they do so much for us on a sport that everybody makes money on. We better do what is right. And they finally acquiesced to the creation of the men's hockey conference. I bring that up because I'm just going to hit Notre Dame really quick here. But I'm not going to be focusing on Notre Dame on this program. Notre Dame, we all know they're the top of the Big Ten candidate list. For Minnesota, when Notre Dame wanted to have discussions with the Big Ten on joining the men's hockey conference, those discussions did go through Minnesota first and last. And that is why we were able to break the story back in November 18, 2015. And then it finally happened in early 2016 when Don Lucia beat everybody out the door and said, great news for Big Ten. Notre Dame makes the Big Ten a stronger conference. But other than that, the University of Minnesota does not have truly any ties to Notre Dame. Not really. Not like all the other Midwest schools. Hockey, the Gophers, Notre Dame, they knew where they had to go to. That was the University of Minnesota. But other than that, the University of Minnesota, of course, they're going to support Notre Dame's entry into the conference. But the University of Minnesota is not going to play any part of that at all. Okay? So we're not going to really talk about Notre Dame when it comes to the University of Minnesota and what they want. If Notre Dame calls, they are in. I think that's pretty simple. I want to go to, now we're going to go to each and every ACC school. And based on a long discussion with a lot of notes with BTM, which is short for Big Ten Man and Associates, a lot of ties to the University of Minnesota. We were the ones that broke the PJ Fleck story through BTM. And you want to know more about that? That's also in the Los Angeles Times article. I want to show you guys something here. The University of Minnesota they're involved with everybody, obviously. Well, maybe not obviously, but they are with everybody. So they have a up close they're in the room with basically every one of these ACC institutions. I'll give you an example. They're in this, I don't even know what to call it. It's called DCN, the curation, I don't even know what it is. A curation, some organization, and of course, you've got most of these Big Ten universities in there, and you've got Duke University. And this is the list. And you got Virginia Tech. So we'll start with Duke first. Duke is something that the University of Minnesota, of course, would support. Duke has incredible research, a bigger research university than Minnesota. They have they share their own library with Stanford and other Ivy League schools. It would be something that the University of Minnesota would vote for if it was placed in front of them. But BTM and his associates believe that Duke really is not on the top of the list for the University of Minnesota. They do a lot of things together. They really do. You can Google it. You can find it. But this is not where the University of Minnesota would probably put on their top of their list. For the University of Minnesota, now again, University of Minnesota is not calling the shots here. They're not calling the shots. But for whatever reason, there might have been a reason given that I can't talk about here live. I can't, there might be some stuff in names that I'm embargoed, but Duke doesn't quite fit. It doesn't quite fit the University of Minnesota and who they would want to add next. Now, let me add one thing. The University of Minnesota, everything being even, the University of Minnesota is a big proponent of, a big supporter of public universities. So take that as you will. Also, there is not a lot of Minnesota alumnus. I mean, there is some, of course, going into North Carolina, high-tech area, but there isn't. Let me put it to you this way. The state of Florida, the state of Georgia, the state of Arizona, there's a lot of places that if the Gophers were playing a football game there, you're going to see Gophers at that game. Again, this is a University of Minnesota live show. So I'm being kind of we're being narrow here. I'm just telling you guys what the University of Minnesota, what they would want next. They're not calling the shots, but this is a very narrow live show, okay? When it comes to the serving the alumnus, the alumni of the University of Minnesota, Duke doesn't really, it isn't there. It isn't really there. Duke's football, it's no disrespect to Duke, but it's of less value than the University of Minnesota. The basketball, great value. Incredible value. But the University of Minnesota is not going to make a decision on anything basketball. It's not what the University of Minnesota would put at one of their top schools that they would support. Again, there's support in the Big Ten for Duke. There's no question about that. There's no question about that. But when Duke is knocking on the door of these institutions and saying, we can do this for you and that for you and this for you and that for you, they can do some stuff for the University of Minnesota, but it isn't going to really serve the University of Minnesota as much as I would have thought, and I know a lot of other people would have thought. BTM says Duke would not be one of the top ones. But if it's Duke and somebody, University of Minnesota ain't going to say no to Duke. It just isn't it's not somebody that they're going to be sponsoring. Now, Michigan is interested in Duke. Michigan is interested in Miami. And Minnesota is very connected with Michigan and Wisconsin. So again, I'm not saying that Minnesota would not cast their vote for Duke and not support him in the end, but it ain't something that Minnesota is, they're not pushing for a Duke. Let's talk about the state of Florida. Now, there is a lot of Minnesotans living in the state of Florida, okay? We all know that. A lot of them are quite, maybe getting up in years, like myself, snowbirds. It is interesting. We talk about the enrollment, the enrollment cliff, right? The Armageddon when it comes to students. Unfortunately for the University of Minnesota, it's really going to hit that school. University of Minnesota is big, massive school. It is gigantic. And it's in different places in the state of Minnesota. But the enrollment cliff is really serious for University of Minnesota. If you look at who goes to the University of Minnesota, it's like 50,000 are from the state of Minnesota, 5,000 are from Wisconsin, and then there's scattered hundreds across the Midwest. And there's like 50 from South Carolina, 200 from the state of Florida, 120 from Virginia. The University of Minnesota, when it comes to expansion, are not going to be able to attract students. These students do not want to go to the University of Minnesota, probably because it ain't all that warm here. The Minnesota does not attract. Very attractive to students, high-level students, international students, big on. Illinois and Minnesota have a high percentage of graduate international students. But we're not going to get them from the state of Florida or anywhere. So that is a little bit unique to the University of Minnesota. But playing a football game, playing a basketball game, I think people would be surprised that the Gophers would be interested. The Gophers that live in that state would go to the football games. As an example, UCLA. The Gophers don't have this huge fan base. It's not as big as Iowa. It's not as big as Wisconsin. It's nowhere near as big as Nebraska. But it travels quite well. And those that do not live in the state go to the football games. UCLA, the Rose Bowl, you can ask any Gopher. You can go back and watch it. It was a massive Gopher. A lot of Gopher fans at that football game. Colorado, the Gophers do what the Cornhuskers do. We fill up half that stadium in Colorado. In Florida, Florida State and Miami, there would be Gopher fans at those games. Number one, to get out of the cold. Two, we got a lot of Minnesotans living in the state of Florida. That would be attractive. See, that would be something that the University of Minnesota would be going, this is good for our alumni. Also, there are University of Minnesota associations and clubs down in the state of Florida. Not so much, as I've been told by BTM, not so much in Tallahassee, not so much in Miami. More like Tampa Bay and Fort Myers. But again, a lot of Minnesotans are in the state of Florida. Now you can go ahead and Google this. You can go research, but University of Minnesota does research with Florida State. They do research with the University of Miami. BTM told me that the University of Minnesota was a supporter of the University of Miami becoming AAU. They also were a supporter of Notre Dame becoming AAU. Even though that's not a public vote, this was told to me by BTM. The University of Miami has a lot of support in the Big Ten, and they do have support from the University of Minnesota. This is high-level research stuff going on. High-level genome research going on. They got the support of Michigan. They got the support of Wisconsin. They got the support of Michigan. They probably have it with Northwestern. I don't know. The BTM did not tell me that. I do have notes in here. So Miami's got a lot of support, and I do think that the University of Minnesota sees Miami at a level in which they would support them at the very top candidate list. Miami would be at the very top of the University of Minnesota's list. There's a lot of support there. And Florida State is not all that far behind, which BTM has told me in the past, and I've been honest with y'all. BTM has said, Florida State is not one of the top targets for the Big Ten. They're just not. They're just not. But we talked about the Florida State-Miami blend. That is the avenue of Florida State to get in the Big Ten. And the BTN believes that's the only avenue that Florida State can get in the Big Ten is to be lynched up with Miami. Minnesota would be one of the schools that could support Florida State. The problem is Wisconsin. The problem was Northwestern. And he did not mention Michigan. But the University of Minnesota could support Florida State. But just like Duke, for reasons, they're not at that level that Minnesota would sponsor and push. So far, the schools that we've gone through, Miami is the one school that Minnesota would push for. Let's go to Virginia and North Carolina. It is obvious that the University of Minnesota does a lot with Virginia, and they have for decades. The University of Minnesota and the Big Ten have gone after Virginia. They've gone after North Carolina. BTM told me in this long discussion that internally, because he's been told this, allegedly, for the people at the University of Minnesota that is going to watch this program, I'm saying allegedly, that internally, they just don't believe that they're going to be true candidates of the Big Ten. And the reason is the leadership is different now at the University of Minnesota than it was back in 2010, 11, and 12. But there is this continuous belief in the Big Ten that has seeped into the University of Minnesota that the time for North Carolina and Virginia to become Big Ten universities was 16 years ago. That was their time. And it did not happen. And getting that done now is even more of a challenge than before. So while Minnesota would vote for North Carolina and Virginia in a heartbeat, they would support them at the level of Miami. BTM is saying, look, they just don't think this is going to happen. Just don't think it's going to happen. It's too complicated. Big Ten is on the outside looking in. They couldn't get it done in 2010 when the SEC was not even a part of it, and they're not going to be able to get it done now. So let's go down to Georgia Tech, because this is the one that the University of Minnesota has been told by BTM is uniquely fits what the University of Minnesota wants. And then we'll get to Clemson. Georgia Tech, Minnesota, they are they most definitely are brothers from another mother. They have worked on, they've been a part of both universities, has been told to me, have ran research where one will do it and then the other will come and assist. The other one will do it, the other will come and assist when it comes to urban issues. Engineering, trying to figure out pollution solutions. They both are like the same. They both are the same. They're brothers, basically. One is in a major international city of Atlanta, right there deep in the South, in Minneapolis, major airport, major university. The Atlanta has all these Fortune 500 companies. Minnesota has more Fortune 500 companies than Wisconsin, Iowa, and Nebraska combined. They both are major research universities. You got all this corporate money. And Georgia Tech doesn't have the biggest football brand, just like Minnesota. They're brothers from another mother. The University of Minnesota would support Georgia Tech like that. Like that. I'm going to get to Clemson next because Clemson, there's a unique story about Clemson. And it is something that I wasn't expecting. Okay? It is something that I was not expecting. We got a $5 holler. $5 holler from the Evil Badger. Greg, I have some bad news for you. Haywood and Mandel are day-to-day and are expected to start on the right side of the O-line. Well, first of all, the Evil Badger, I'm glad. I don't want injuries. I don't want, even to the Evil Badgers, I do not want injuries. And I'm glad they're coming back. I really am. Let me know when they officially start practicing. Let me know when they officially put the pads on. But it takes time. You gotta have cohesion on the offensive line. You gotta have the right side of the line of Wisconsin is completely unknown. It was the left side that was supposed to be the spear of the Wisconsin offense. But this is good news. This is good news. Congratulations, Evil Badger. Let me know when they start to practice. Very good news for the Wisconsin Badgers as they get ready to play the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Okay. Thank you, Evil Badger. Thank you for the $5 holler. I appreciate it. Kenneth Maynard, I will get to your super chat here in a little bit. I appreciate it, Kenneth Maynard. Thank you very much. I just want to finish off the Georgia Tech. And then we got to get to Clemson, which is a story unto itself. Georgia Tech. So according to BTM, the most realistic, what the University of Minnesota, the people that he's talked with, and he knows everybody allegedly, the University of Minnesota would welcome the blend of a Miami and Georgia Tech. It would fit right into what they're doing academically, research-wise, and it would help them when it comes to travel. And this is where they believe they should be. Gophers should be there in the Southeast in Miami and Georgia Tech. And they're really not a big believer that they're going to be able to get into, if it's not going to be worthwhile, it's not going to be valuable enough. They're not going to be able to get to North Carolina, Virginia. Duke isn't quite going to work out. It is Georgia Tech in Miami. And the University of Minnesota would be one of those schools that would be intrigued about a Miami, Florida State dynamic. This is coming right from BTM. And they're not the only ones on that. Overall, yeah, Florida State, yeah. Pete Thamel said what he said. Other people have, but that Florida State Miami thing, it would be incredibly intriguing. And according to BTM, Minnesota isn't quite where Wisconsin is in being anti-Florida State. They're not there. Now, you got to remember, there's a lot of Gophers that live in the state of Florida. There's a lot of Gophers that live in and around Tallahassee. There's a lot of Gophers everywhere. There's no, that it is, and there's a lot of Gophers in Atlanta. I forgot to mention that. There are Gopher clubs in Atlanta that are bigger than anywhere else. There are Big Ten alumni clubs all over Atlanta. There is a lot of alumni living in Atlanta. So, if Georgia Tech became a Big Ten school, there'd be a lot of Big Ten people going to those games. Okay, so Georgia Tech, Miami, and back to the story of Florida State and Miami together. If that was, that could be a possibility. But for the University of Minnesota, it's Miami and Georgia Tech. That is what they would support the most. Again, they're not the ones calling the shots, but they're often the canary in the coal mine. So I'm sitting there thinking about, what do the Buckeyes and Penn State want? Penn State is supporting Miami. We've been told that at Peek Around the Corner. We've been absolutely told that. We have been told that. In many different ways, many different reasons, many different political reasons, many different... Wisconsin got Penn State in. Donna Shalala got Penn State in. Donna Shalala, University of Miami. Penn State's going to try to return the favor. There is a lot of layers going on here. There's some of it I can't talk about. I'm embargoed on some of it. Miami's got a lot of support. Nothing is done. Nothing is signed. Nothing is sealed and delivered. None of that. I don't think anything is imminent. I'm sorry, I've been saying that for 3 years. We were talking about Miami's support in the Big Ten when a lot of people were dragging them over the coals as a potential Big Ten candidate. And by the way, well, I don't want to go down that road. You know what? I'm going to go down that road real quick. The University of Minnesota, according to BTM and its associates, I'll get to Clemson because I got a very unique story on Clemson. Very unique story on Clemson. Okay, so please, I'll get to it. the University of Minnesota, again, isn't quite, when you're talking about Kansas, Utah, when you're talking about California and Stanford, according to BTM, there really is only one school that the University of Minnesota would. Minnesota loves going west, right? They love going west. They just played California in California, Berkeley, and they loved it. They lost, but they loved it. They loved going to California. They played Fresno State. They played Colorado. They played Colorado State. They've gone west. They're going to continue to go west. It's very important for the University of Minnesota. But really, when it comes to BTM, and the reason why we had that Utah thing, and we reported the Utah, a couple of months before Brett McMurphy said in public that Utah was a Big Ten candidate, the University of Minnesota is highly supportive of a Utah potentially becoming a Big Ten school. That's not in the cards right now. It just isn't. But Utah is thought very highly. The University of Minnesota, they can see the Salt Lake City, the airport, that from Minnesota. My wife, I'm not going to get into it too much here, but when it came to Salt Lake City, I'm not going to get into it, but it became a very important part of our lives. Salt Lake City to Dallas to Mexico. Anyways, you can go easily from Minneapolis to Salt Lake City. It's a place that University of Minnesota could very well support in the future. Remember, Minnesota was very supportive of Oregon and Washington and UCLA, USC. University of Minnesota, in the center of the country, they're very pro expand out west. Unfortunately for Utah and other schools, it's the Southeast that Big Ten is focused on. Okay, let me get to Clemson here. Let me go. Clemson is a very unique story. So right now, it's Miami, Georgia Tech. That is what has been told to BTM. Those would be the highest priority for the University of Minnesota. And then there is a possibility of that Florida State-Miami blend, just like it is in other parts of the Big Ten. We have got, I'm sorry, Kenneth Maynor. I apologize, Kenneth Maynor. I should have said this one here. Oh, I already did that one. Nope. I already did that one. Here, this is the one I haven't done. Kenneth Maynor, $5 holla. Florida, Vandy, A&M, and Texas are advocates for UNC and Virginia to give a boost to the SEC Academic Alliance. Georgia and Tennessee will be AAU in the near future. I haven't heard about Tennessee being AAU, but I've heard things about Georgia. So, but anyways, yes, I agree with all that. That is all that yes. I think all of that is accurate, Kenneth Maynor. I think all of that is accurate. I think nothing done, nothing signed, sealed, and delivered, but there's been a lot of effort, no matter what Greg Sankey says in public. There's been a lot of Virginia, North Carolina, SEC effort out there. We got Helmer Henderson, $5 holla. How screwed is Big Ten if Feinbaum is right and SEC takes Miami instead of Florida State? That could happen. I don't think that's completely out of the. I don't think that's a total impossibility. I don't think that, and we got Miami in the third tier of the SEC behind North Carolina, Virginia. It would take the SEC probably doing a big scoop. I don't think the Big Ten is completely screwed, but I think the Big Ten, there is a lot of support in the Big Ten for Miami. I would not. That is a viable result right there, Helmer Henderson. Viable result. And if you remember what Feinbaum said about Miami, he said about the market. And the Big Ten, Fox wants that market. And the university presidents want to have Miami as a fully integrated research partner. Okay. Thank you, Helmer Henderson. Appreciate it. We got the Gopher. We've got Dave Alinsky, $5 holla. I always thought that Pittsburgh picked better in the Big Ten. Pitt getting one of the big rivalries back with Penn State would be intriguing for me. Thank you, Dave. Pittsburgh is on the Big Ten candidate list. We often don't talk about them. BTM did not talk about them. They did not talk about them. Even Penn State has not vetoed Pittsburgh as a potential Big Ten candidate. So they're on the list. And they're always on the list. They were on Kevin Warren's list. They were on Brett McMurphy's list that he put out there. And that was recent. If the Big Ten does the big scoop, they have the big list, and maybe Pitt fits in there somewhere. I don't think they fit in at 19 or 20, but they continually are on the list. There's no question about that. Thank you, Dave Alinsky. I appreciate it. Helmer Henderson, Super Chat, $2 holla. Why did Minnesota support evil Michigan State instead of Pittsburgh? I do not know. I don't know the story of that. Maybe it was travel. This was back in the early 1950s. You know, the Big Ten had not gotten to the, they were still 40 years away, 38 years away from adding Penn State, from adding that second region. Maybe it was just too much, too early. That's probably some of the reasons why, but I have not been told directly why that is. But thank you for the $2 holler, Helmer Henderson. Very much appreciated. All right. Clemson. Boy. Okay. So a couple of things on Clemson. BTM is going down we're talking about each school. And he talked a little bit about Kansas, Utah, Stanford, talked a little bit about Arizona, talked about Duke, and they have support in the Big Ten. It just isn't. It isn't what the University of Minnesota isn't going to be all that interested in the blend of two private schools to add to the Big Ten. So if they're going to choose a private school, they're going to choose Miami. Because of all the Minnesotans, alumni that are living in the state of Florida, and other reasons. And it's easier. And there are other reasons, other things I'm embargoed, but it is Georgia Tech in Miami. So he went through all this stuff, and then he got to Clemson. And then he told me something, and I said, why did you tell me that when you know that I can't talk about that? And he said, go ahead and talk about it. So here we are. Clemson, and I did not know this, so I apologize. I have not talked about this. And it sounds, I don't know, it sounds a little bit out of left field, but Clemson has a good relationship with the University of Minnesota. Now, we've talked about how Clemson has a good relationship with North Carolina Chapel Hill. We talk about how Clemson has a good relationship with Notre Dame. We talk about, but they have a good relationship with the University of Minnesota. And relationships are important. And there's a couple of things going on here. One is, it was explained to me that Clemson, I'm not sure how quite the story is, but Clemson, a few years ago, they got a grant to do research on dementia. And they brought in 4 schools, I think it was 4 of them. I could be wrong. 4 or 5, 3, somewhere around there. In this research and finding the solution on dementia. And of course, one of the schools was the University of Minnesota. And B. Tim is telling me that the University of Minnesota is blown away by Clemson in that relationship. And how Clemson does everything. It has been a very, very important and integral thing that they're doing. And I want to say that the University of Florida is also involved. And I want to say the University of South Florida is also involved. And the university, but it is Minnesota and Clemson. And that has been, and that's been going on now. This is important. It's been going on for like 4 or 5 years. So, the other part, and I asked B. Tim, why did not he tell me this? And of course, B. Tim is embargoed from telling me things, just like I'm embargoed from telling you all. I tell you most. So B. Tim told me something, and I said, why did you tell me when I can't say this? And he said, go ahead and say it. When we talk about, and one of the reasons why B. Tim has been feeding me information without giving me the details, but sometimes that's how it has to happen. Do you remember when I said Clemson went from 90-10, 90% SEC, 10% Big Ten, to 70-30, 70% Big Ten, at 70% SEC, 30% Big Ten? Does anybody remember that I said that? Can somebody give me a yes? Because we got a lot of new people in here, and I don't want them to think I'm just blowing smoke. Does anybody remember me when I reported that it was 90-10, then went down to 70-30? Okay, John Hope, thank you very much. Curtis, thank you. Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well, the reason why is because he was given information and has been repeated this information that Clemson, in their strategy to not put all their eggs in one basket, is because Clemson is one of the Big Ten. The University of Minnesota is one of the major schools that they're reaching out to. And anybody watching at the University of Minnesota, and I know some of you are, I'll go ahead and say this. Allegedly. I have not signed an NDA, so I can, and if you want to come out and say that I'm wrong, go ahead. Go ahead. But Clemson has been, they reached out to the University of Minnesota, and the University of Minnesota is, not willing to write them off. The University of Minnesota is, I'm not going to say they're sponsoring them, but they're open to it. And if the University of Minnesota is open to it, maybe Wisconsin, maybe Northwest, if you get a foothold into that faction, if the Big Ten does the big scoop, or if things do not work out when it comes to Miami or a Georgia Tech, for whatever reason, it has to be a Miami Clemson. For whatever reason, it has to be a Georgia Tech Clemson, that the University of Minnesota might be in the pocket of Clemson, which I would have never, ever, 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 ever have said on the show until tonight. So there is a Clemson-Minnesota dynamic. University of Minnesota is highly impressed and integrated with Clemson on a very serious, very complicated dementia issue that we have in this country. But it is Clemson and Minnesota that have found themselves in the foxhole together. And the University of Minnesota is impressed by that. So, after all of this, the University of Minnesota, BTM, I think the ones that the University of Minnesota are feeling the most motivated to support in Big Ten expansion is Miami and everything they bring as an institution and the market, everything that Georgia Tech would bring. And then there is some positivity around a potential Florida State in Miami, and Clemson in Miami, or possibly a Clemson and Georgia Tech. The University of Minnesota does not have hopes about a North Carolina, Virginia. Not really a supporter of Duke for whatever reason, and that is a complicated. Some of that I'm embargoed on. I think it has. I think it has to do with. I don't want to say it. I'm not going to give any details away that I can't, but I think it has to do with some high academic trust issues. Like, the reason why Stanford isn't all that The reason why Stanford hesitates on any possibility of joining the Big Ten, schools like Minnesota are hesitant about adding a Stanford and Duke. There is some high-level academia stuff that I will never be able to understand. But, so there it is, ladies and gentlemen. That is our long monologue, and I want to thank everybody. I want to thank everybody for listening. I'm gonna go to phone calls. Again, if you call in, the floor is yours. You can talk about anything in football that you want, college football. You don't have to talk about any of this. You can talk about the week 0 games. You can talk about your first game. You can talk about the injury reports. You can talk about the quarterback battles that are going on. And there is some big... Jeremy Hecklinski put on a show in the Iowa scrimmage. He threw 5 touchdown passes. The Iowa Hawkeyes might have their quarterback. There's battle going on there's a big battle going on, and there's a big battle going on at Clemson. Tate Reynolds. So, Tennessee, George McIntyre, Brandon Frazier. There's a lot of stuff going on. So call us up. If you give us a call, the floor is yours. Super chats, the floor is yours. And the other comments I'll pick and choose depending on how relative it is to what we talked about and how creative writing you got in your chat. So anyways, I'm going to open up the phone lines again. University of Minnesota, we talked about what schools they would want. Not that they're calling the shots, but their voice seems to be Miami and Georgia Tech. An intriguing possibility with Florida State, an intriguing possibility with Clemson, but it is Miami and Georgia Tech seems to be what the University of Minnesota would want if they could be the ones that chose, which they're not. But they have been, and historically they've been the canary in the coal mine. No question about that. We went through the long history of it. So, let me open up the phone lines. Anybody want to call in? 763-260-1333. 763-260-1333. Give us a call. Give us a call if you want. Again, the Sunday shows. Going to be aftermath shows going on. August 30 for the next 3 months, every Sunday, aftermath. They're going to be long shows, call-in shows. People are going to be crying about their team. They're going to be celebrating about their team. People are going to be yelling and screaming about the referees, about their head coaches making the wrong calls. 763-260-1333. I think I've caught up with the super chats. I do want to thank Heartbreak 25, Kenneth Maynard, Buckeye Greg, Evo Badger, Helmer Hennison, Dave Valinsky. I appreciate the super chats, appreciate the support. We got 227 people in. Please smash the like button if you've liked our content. I will give a little bit more time for the phone calls, any super chats. I will check, see if there's any breaking news on college football. The AP poll is coming out tomorrow. The first AP poll.
from
Tristan 5.
Tristan 5, the floor is yours. Thanks for calling, sir. Appreciate it.
Hey, Greg. Thanks for taking my call. Listen, when you were talking about Penn State, the history of realignment, and how a few schools, I think you mentioned Indiana, was against it, man, my reaction was my jaw hitting the floor. I can't believe anyone would have been against Penn State joining the Big Ten.
There was 5 of them right off the bat. In Minnesota was one of them. Yep.
Oh, my goodness. Well, hey, look, thank goodness they came to their senses, maybe. Or
Yep.
they got outvoted, maybe.
It was 7-3. Final vote was 7-3. It was never unanimous.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and then now what you're talking about Duke seems surprising to me also.
Yes. Yeah. Now that's from a University of Minnesota perspective. Okay.
Sure.
So it's dangerous. I mean, I wanted to narrow it down to University of Minnesota for tonight only. So everybody keep that in mind. Go ahead, sir. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. Well, no, that's all right. I don't mind. I'm concerned that if North Carolina chooses to go to the SEC, and by the way, I'm still convinced that they don't know what they want to do. Okay, but for the sake of argument, if they go to the SEC, man, I hope the Big Ten doesn't give up on the idea of a Duke. I mean, Greg, they got to get schools in the Mid-Atlantic. They have to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If they leave Maryland out there and the SEC comes in and they get somehow like a North Carolina and a Virginia and whoever else, there might come a day where Maryland says, well, let's just switch to the SEC because there's more schools regionally for us. Right? And that's what we can't have. Like, the Big Ten needs a strong presence in the Mid-Atlantic, and I'm just surprised that – I know it's just Minnesota, like you're saying, but, man, there should be support for Duke. There should be.
And there is. And there is.
Okay.
And there is by, bigger and more important programs in Minnesota.
Well, more important, that's a humble thing to say, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
They're a founding member,
Yeah.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, great information. I appreciate all the good work you're doing, and keep it up, and I'll talk to you later.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Appreciate it very much.
Bye-bye.
Look, I'm gonna. Thank you, Tristan. On the matter of, there is something that I'm not able to discuss, and I can't. I want to be transparent on that, on the Duke question. There's also stuff I do not understand. And so it is my fault that I do not have the academic chops, the sophistication, the intelligence to understand it and to be able to deliver to you all the information. There is some sort of Ivy League school, big BTAA competition, library competition. Now again, Duke and the University of Minnesota does stuff together. They do. I just showed something I do not understand. Creation, data. I don't even know what that is. A lot of you probably do. I have no idea. I'm just the original Minnesota moron. But there seems to be like a trust issue. I don't understand it. Like Georgia Tech in Minnesota, for example, they do engineering stuff together, like on vehicles. They've done urban environmental research together. They've done high tech stuff together. So again, there are universities that are more engineering. There's universities that are more medical research, and the University of Minnesota does both. And from their perspective, the University of Miami kind of fits in their pocket on one thing and Georgia Tech fits in their pocket on the other. I'm just talking University of Minnesota, selfishly for University of Minnesota, that is what they would fit into what they would want in their expansion. It doesn't mean that Minnesota would not support and vote for other schools.
Call from
Rick?
Rick is on the line. Nice to hear from Rick again. The floor is yours. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. How you doing, Greg?
Good, good, good.
Getting ready for football season.
Oh, man, I am ready. We are going to be doing watch parties. We are going to have so much fun. We are going to cry. There's going to be so much crying on this program. It's going to be unbelievable. Go ahead, Rick. Floor is yours.
Well, that's the highs and the lows of a college football season. And NFL season, too.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I enjoyed the insight into Minnesota's thinking and BTM's input, too. Mm-hmm. But I was surprised that a school was left off of the list. Can you guess which school?
Well, I might have forgotten to mention one, but he went through a lot. He went through schools that Go ahead. Which school is that?
I'm thinking the University of California at Berkeley.
He did mention that. He did mention, he did talk about it. I mentioned it a little bit because, yes, academically and research-wise, they are a great fit. Of course they are.
They are.
Yeah.
With anyone, yes.
Yeah, both of them are at the very height. I mean, California, Berkeley is one or two when it comes to public universities. And of course,
the top three public universities.
Yeah, and Stanford is Stanford.
Well, Stanford's private, so you don't. I'm assuming they don't want to go there the same reason they don't want to go to Duke. But you mentioned Georgia Tech, which of course is public.
Yes.
Miami is private, but everybody wants Miami. That's just.
And it fits the location of where they want to go next.
Right.
And California, Berkeley really doesn't fit what they want to do next. I do think that from BTM, I do think if it swings back around again, if there's 20 schools in the Big Ten, and if there's a reason and motivation and a want to expand again, I think the University of Minnesota would probably support a California more than other schools. But I think University of Minnesota, according to BTM, would most definitely support a Utah.
Well, I can see why Georgia Tech would fit in, because obviously it plants a flag in Atlanta, Georgia, and that's a great thing for the Big Ten. To piggyback with Miami, a flag in the state of Florida for the Big Ten.
There's a lot of commonality.
Beyond.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm thinking if it goes beyond, I don't think Georgia Tech will be the 20th. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I think Georgia Tech is in the top 24.
Yeah.
But I also think Cal Berkeley's in the top 24. Mm-hmm. You're going to go to 24, you're going to want to add one more out there on the West Coast. And San Francisco is a perfect place for Oregon and Washington to fly into and the two LA schools to fly up to. Mm-hmm. And Berkeley's also a hell of a lot more attractive academically than Utah will ever be.
Correct.
So I've kind of got them bumping Utah on the 24 list, and I've got Georgia Tech right beside Cal on the 24 list because they bring Atlanta. I don't see Clemson. I don't see anybody in the Big Ten wanting Clemson because does Clemson have 25,000 people in it if you take away the students?
Not a large alumni base, no.
No, I'm talking about the population of the city of Clemson,
Well,
South Carolina.
Clemson,
If you take away the students and the faculty and the employees,
okay.
how many people live in the city of Clemson?
Okay, but that is true. But I mean, Lincoln and other parts that the University of Minnesota, Clemson is a huge brand in a incredibly growth state, and Clemson has huge following in the state of Atlanta. So if Georgia Tech is not on the list, but you want Atlanta and you want that corporate money in Atlanta, you want part of that market in Atlanta, Clemson is the next thing that you would grab. I'm just trying to give the reasons why Clemson. I don't think Clemson's going to be 19-20, and I think the odds might be not all that great for 21, 22, 23, 24, but Clemson does bring a lot of value when it comes to the market of Atlanta. That is for sure.
The only way I see Clemson going to the Big Ten is if the SEC leaves them behind on their big scoop. The SEC does a big scoop, and by big I mean 4, and to go to 20, and leaves Clemson behind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think most of the schools in the Big Ten want to go to Clemson.
Okay.
Do you know any Big Ten school that's endorsing them or sponsoring them?
No, but I did not know about this about University of Minnesota until we had this long talk, BTM, and then he let me know that it was Minnesota that Clemson reached out to first, or one of the first ones, if not the first ones, because he was told that by University of Minnesota people, and that's how I'm going to describe it, people. And the University of Minnesota had been incredibly impressed with Clemson. So,
well, I guess that would also indicate that no one else has reached out to Clemson, so that Clemson is doing the reaching out, and the first one they go to with a positive result.
No, these schools are reaching out. They've got to. I mean, Duke has. They've all done it. Miami has. You know what you're trying to do? You're trying to get 13 votes. You're trying to get 13 votes. So you're not just reaching out to Petiti. You're reaching out to the universities. You are reaching out to faculty members that used to be at your university and now at the other university. I can tell you that Miami, can I say this? Miami is reaching out to. Miami is reaching out. I'm going to say it because what the hell? Miami's got people, for example, they got people at the University of Maryland that might be working on their behalf. So, because they used to be former faculty at Miami. So, there's a lot of reaching out everywhere. And Clemson reaching out to the University of Minnesota isn't something that I thought it would ever say in this program, but it happened because BTN doesn't play.
Well, yeah.
Yep.
Well, yeah, because as you said, you've got to get 13.
Yep.
You got to reach out to somebody.
Yep.
So you're probably going to pick your top 13, not the bottom 5.
And I will say this, and I'm just, this last time I interrupt, I promise, Rick, I'll
No, you're not interrupting.
But
you don't have the conversation.
But we gotta, and I've said this before. The reason why Clemson went to the court, the reason why Florida State went to the court, wasn't because they knew what was going to happen, because they did not know what was going to happen. The reason why they went to the court is because they wanted to talk. They wanted to have these conversations with these universities because they were not allowed to have first-party talks. It was not, in fact, Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, reminded, before the court case was settled, reminded Petitti and Sankey, you cannot have talks with our institutions. And they both agreed, yes, well, of course we can. But once that settlement happened, the floodgates opened, and Clemson's taken heavy advantage of it. One of the things they did was definitely reach out to the University of Minnesota because they had a much tighter relationship experience than I never knew about this. And it's a recent one. It's over the last 5 years. So they're all being aggressive in their discussions. They have to.
No, I'm not surprised by Clemson reaching out to any of the P2 schools.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you have to do to get into the club. You just said it. For the Big Ten, you got to get 13 out of 18. Yeah, for the SEC, I don't know what the numbers are.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure they're just as aggressive for SEC schools to try and get their endorsement. I'm talking more the other direction. Instead of them reaching out, I'm more interested in the schools in the conferences that are
Sure.
reaching out to them or returning their calls, if you will. Okay, so Minnesota is answering the Clemson call.
Yeah.
And perhaps Maryland is answering the Hurricanes call.
I think it's safe to say that a Maryland and a Penn State are sponsoring the Miami candidacy, and I won't go any further than that.
Okay, and that gives you 2 of the 13. There are probably more. Probably more.
Yeah, probably.
Because Miami's just so damn attractive. It's got so much going for it.
Yeah.
But Miami and Miami football in 2026 isn't Clemson, South Carolina, and Clemson football 2026.
Mm-hmm.
From a Big Ten perspective. I'm thinking from a Michigan State, Ohio State, well, Penn State, we already know how they feel. And the other schools flying down to Miami to play a game in Miami against Miami. Big deal. I just don't see them getting excited about flying into Clemson, South Carolina.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my view of Big Ten fans as a whole in their view. I think Clemson is way more SEC than Miami will ever be.
I think a lot of people would agree with you on that. Yep.
Miami is SEC like Stanford is ACC.
Yeah,
Okay,
but Stanford is ACC, so Miami might be SEC.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
But do they really belong there?
You know what? I got a feeling in the next 10, 15 years, there's going to be schools joining the ACC that we would have never imagined that they would be ACC schools. But alas, I think they're going to be. So.
Well, that's if there's an ACC.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take care.
All right, buddy. Thank you. Appreciate it. We got a $5 holla. $5 holla from Mama Duck, Clemson Tiger. Mama Duck. Greg, in all sincerity, you really are the best with information, good or bad. I look forward to your stream. Thank you, Mama Duck. I appreciate you becoming a part of this family. Thank you so very much. Again, I did not have that information about, I only had the information about this 90-10 going to 70-30. There were reasons behind it from BTM perspective. I didn't know what they were, but I delivered the information. And now I was told at least some of it. I don't know if there's more there, but why that is. And I would not have pictured the University of Minnesota, but I'm not keeping up on this academic. I think everybody understands that I'm not an academia guy. I do not know how to talk. I don't know how to spell. I don't know math. I could have never gotten into the University of Minnesota. I could have never gotten into the Clemson University. I could have never gotten into any. I went to St. Cloud State, for God's sakes. They had to take me because nobody else would. I graduated. I got a college degree, 1991. But, I'm not keeping up on. I did not know that Clemson and University of Minnesota was doing something with long-term memory care type of research. There was a bunch of stuff told to me that I didn't even understand. And the University of Minnesota has been, when you get in these partnerships of doing these research, sometimes it doesn't go quite the way you thought it would go. Like, not everything is a home run. This has turned out to be a home run. And this has been going on for like 5 years, Clemson and the University of Minnesota, with a few other universities. So Clemson reached out to Minnesota. Pretty interesting. I did not know that. Thank you so much, Mama Duck, for all your support. Your incredible generosity, very much appreciated, helping us keep the lights on and grow the channel. We've got a little bit more time. For any more phone calls. Just checking out if there's any breaking news. The AP preseason top 25 drops tomorrow at noon Eastern, 11 in the morning Central Time. I'm going to be doing an episode, real-time reaction episode, and then I'll release the episode, and so go check it out. And then we'll talk about it later on our Monday live program. So, you're going to be seeing an episode about 12:30 Eastern Time. Dropping. So, now, am I going to react badly to this AP poll that gets released? Probably. I'm probably going to overreact.
Call from
John Grove.
John Grove, I appreciate you calling, John Grove. The floor is absolutely yours.
Luke, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. Hey, I just want to let you know, all right, I right before I called, I was hearing you about how you weren't smart enough to get into Minnesota, and I was just thinking in my mind, well, I wasn't smart enough to get into Kansas or any other schools like that. But you know what? That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter because in the next 2 weeks, we can talk about things that we actually know, and that's football.
Oh, you're saying that I know football? Have you seen my record against the spread the last 4 years, Mr. John Grove?
Hey, you're the one embracing Greg the Goldmine guy.
That's right. That's right. You're right. Thanks for reminding me.
You
Thanks
gotta pop your collar, you know.
Thanks for reminding me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, we can all point and mention about academics and relationships, but because it's football season, I just want to get this point out of the way. If academics is the only thing you can point to right now, and if your athletic teams are horrible, that just kind of makes you sad as a program overall. And that I'm alluding to the University of Kansas, as well as several other schools. So I don't know. It's a fun night. I'm taking my shots as well. Just an unrelated bold prediction.
Got it.
But I have as well, and this is not for like the what's that series that you're doing?
I do declare college football world championship.
Yeah, no, this is we're thinking really long term. I'm thinking 10 to 15 years. Would it surprise you if North Dakota State becomes a Big 12 team? Because I see the potential there, Flug.
Yeah, it would surprise me. Only because it's not the right blend. It might be the right brand, but it ain't. The Big 12 has whatever the Big 12 does next.
Oh yeah, no, it has to.
Hold on. Whatever the Big 12 does next, they have to get big markets. Period.
Yep.
So no, I don't see them becoming a Big 12. I see them, unfortunately for other G6 schools, I think they're going to rise. I think they're going to be a power in G6 football. And I know, look, I think they are. There is such a high level of accountability and demand from that fan base, from the boosters. I know I know two of them, by the way, but they're gonna be a thorn in the side of all the other G6 programs. They're gonna be the Boise State of the Midwest. So everybody buckle. They might not be able to get to that level this year, or they may. I don't know, but they're gonna be somebody that we're gonna have to talk about year in. If they go 6-6 this year, John Grove, they probably won't. But I'm just saying, don't take this 1 year they're going to be a thorn in the G6 side in the years ahead. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, I think they'll be a Mountain West title contender, Flea. Those road games are going to be difficult with New Mexico, UNLV, and Hawaii. With those three and North Dakota State, you're probably looking at as the four best teams. So it's going to be daunting, and it's going to be a new environment for them. But I think because I do agree as far as where the Big 12 needs to expand with its more national reach. Like they're already doing that with some of these international games, and they're trying to do that with the Monster deal. But what they're getting back, though, is horrific. But I do agree as far as expanding that footprint nationally with UConn and USF as candidates at the ACC remains stable and stuff like that. But the reason why I bring up North Dakota State is because you were just talking about relationships and the way that schools are sponsoring others and stuff like that. Like, say if a Big 12 does lose a few schools down the road, like 10 to 15 years we're talking about again, that does leave a spot, though, for a school like North Dakota State, who already has a lot of ag ties with several Midwest schools in the Big 12. With K-State's leadership right now, they've already had some strong ties with North Dakota State, too. So, I just kind of look at these synchronicities of sorts, and I think Iowa State it kind of falls into that realm too, as far as the ag school ties. maybe not like the national blend is there right now, but culturally. But I mean, North Dakota State, if they can expand their prowess in football, kind of like the way Boise State has, then that's when I could possibly see that happen. And a lot of things will change in 10 to 15 years. But I'm just telling you guys right now, like if there's more momentum with North Dakota State over these next few years, I wouldn't leave that out as a possibility. So
Okay. All right.
Alrighty, I'll let you go on that front. Appreciate it, Flu.
I appreciate it, sir. Great call, sir. John Grove. Great calls tonight, like always. I appreciate it. We've got Anthony Carlson, Mr. Sparty. It's a new day, a new era for Michigan State football. You got one hell of a coach. All right? You got one hell of a coach. There's no denying that. So, and there's going to be a lot of buy-in at East Lansing. It's easier to give to Mr. Fitzgerald than the previous coach. And he was a good coach coming out of Oregon State. It's just easier because we've all seen Fitzgerald win more with less at Northwestern. Now what is he going to do with more at Michigan State? Anthony Carlson, hey Greg, looking forward to what happens in the upcoming season and possible realignment. I'm off X now, but will continue to watch your shows. Thank you, Anthony. Very kind words. Thank you for becoming a Cloak and Dagger member for how many months? How many months is that? 28 months. 28 months. That's like almost 2 years in Minnesota math. Appreciate it. Cloak and Dagger, Anthony Carlson. Okay, we're going to lock it up here. We've been on the air for a long time. A very interesting show, I believe. Let me know what you guys think. I do want to say thank you to the people who donated this program that help us keep the lights on and grow the channel. Heartbreak 25, Kenneth Maynard, Buckeye Greg, Evil Badger, Kenneth Maynard, Hammer Hennison, Dave Valinsky, Hammer Hennison, Mama Duck, Clemson Tiger, and Anthony Carlson. Very much appreciate your donation. You're helping out, helping us keep the lights on and grow the channel. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Before you leave, please smash the like button, subscribe to our channel, and make sure you ring the notification bell because we can come on live at any time. We're going to be coming on with an episode tomorrow at noon Eastern. Noon, 11 o'clock Central. Live reaction show about the first AP poll that comes out. It's going to be an episode. We're not going to come on live, but later on in the day, we'll come on live and talk about the AP poll. I'm going to have my quick reaction. I want you to put down your reaction in the chat room on the episode and the live show later on. It could be a very busy Monday, April 17th, a very busy August 17th. So buckle up, brace for impact. Until next time, from all of us at PATC, to all of you, please, you all take great care of each other. And as always, God, family,